Okay, today I'd like to go over another one of our budget builds just to show that you can make a competitive race sled. This is a Pro Stock 1000 dirt sled, stock CK3 suspension that we've taken, and on the front here you can see we've extended it since we're putting a 144 track under it, and we've taken the stock arm here and added brace here just to strengthen it and be safe. Again, being on a budget, used Kimpex shock I had. Top collar doesn't fit, so we've welded a piece here to keep it on. It'll work fine. As we go to the back, we took the stock shock, took it apart, added some compression and rebound shims, some very thick oil since we're just going to grass drag it. If we were ice racing, we couldn't have done that. We would have had to do it all with valving just because of the temperature. Now as I go to the back, we extended it, reinforced it, and used some aluminum bigger diameter wheels to let the track roll a little easier. You can also see here I bolted and glued a piece of angle iron to support from the front arm all the way back to the wheels. Okay, on the chassis, the only real critical point is where your front arm bolts to the chassis. That takes all the force. We've added quite a long piece of angle and riveted it to the chassis. Probably could have gotten by with just a short 1-inch plate, but definitely a lot stronger this way. I've got my measurement 25 1/4 back to where I mount my rear suspension. I need that to put it in my simulated jig on the chassis. The only real critical point is where your front arm bolts to the chassis. That takes all the force. We've added quite a long piece of angle and riveted it to the chassis. Probably could have gotten by with just a short 1-inch plate, but definitely a lot stronger this way. I've got my measurement 25 1/4 back to where I mount my rear suspension. I need that to put it in my simulated jig on the back. Okay, now I'm going to check to make sure I don't have a falling rate suspension, which I suspect I do since we've put a spacer in the shock to lower it. I'm also going to check to see how much actual travel I have. 6 inches here, 6 3/8 back here. If we move the axle back, we'd have 6 1/2. Now, as I push down on it, very stiff, still very stiff, very stiff. Now, right there, going easier. So I'm going to mark it, check my actual travel. So if we look at the back here, we're at 2 1/2. Our front's 4, so perfect. We've moved 2 inches. ISR wants 2 inches for the dirt, so back here we're at 2 1/2 from 6 1/2. We've moved 4 inches at the back, so a 2-to-1 ratio. So that means I could only move 1 inch here, and I would still have 2 inches back here. I like to have 3 to 4 inches of travel, mainly because if you get on a loose track, you can soften things up and get a little more movement and transfer. So now I'm going to have to figure out some spacers. We'll probably steal a thing from High Gear where the machine and put a bushing in the spring. That will limit my travel about a 1/2 inch. So okay, I'll machine my aluminum spacer, set it at 6 like we had. We have 6 1/2 or 6 3/8 at the back. Now I'm going to push down. Very progressive, very stiff. Again, no springs hooked up. This is just the shock. And we're bottomed. So 4 1/2. She moved 1 1/2 there, and 3. So we moved 3 back here. Exactly what I wanted. 1 inch more than ISR requires. So we're good to go. Now to hook the springs up and get the wheels on. Okay kids, this is why you need to pay attention in school. Lever ratios. I've got my crescent wrench here to keep it from moving with the block. I've got a long lever bar there. I can only use one hand because I had shoulder surgery. So we'll bring it up here with the lever ratio. Put this wood in. Bring it as far forward for better lever ratio. Let this back off. Now get as far out as I can. Lift it up again. Drop it. Bring it down. And hopefully my bolt's long enough. Just. Get it on by 2 or 3 threads. And tighten it up. This shows how much pressure is on something. That's just one spring, plus we've got the shock. Okay, another little trick to lighten the rate on the spring some, you can take some off the coil. There, now if it was a regular coil spring I could run it around on a belt sander, but I'm just going to take a few pounds off and make it a little softer. Actually that should be, I'm going to change the rate a few pounds by making the coil thinner. If I took a few pounds off we wouldn't have a spring left. Okay, now to get my correct ride height I'm going to have to chain it down. We're 9.5. Okay, one of the last things to check, and it's nice to have a steel bench rather than trying to do it on the ground. A little too much clearance here, so I back my adjuster down. And we're good. The other thing I want to check, the top of my drivers are 2.5 inches above where I bolt the top arm. So I'm just going to make sure that nothing's going to hit. And we're good. Plenty of clearance. Okay, the end of our suspension video. So, years ago when I didn't have much test time, and I still don't, I figured out in the shop, here's how to check your suspension. Perfect. The ski's lifted about 2 inches. If I put the motor in and jump harder, it'll do the same. Which means, if I look at my zip tie, which I did last night, the suspension compressed about 1/4 inch with me jumping on it. So for all of you who followed this video and don't have a forklift and all my resources, I would suggest calling my friend John at Proline or Dave Wall at Wall Suspension. You can buy ready-made suspensions, easy to adjust. What you didn't see, last night behind the scenes I had to go in and change a bit of an angle there on my rear stock adjuster. So I've had it in and out a couple times to get it right, and it's going to work. So we're going to go off to the Ohio Snow Bash. We're going to do a couple test runs, and we're after that $9 grand purse. Thanks.